Hi folks, this is Travis here at Set Apart Homestead, and we have some blackberry vines here, blackberry brambles. I would say that in the Ozarks, this has got to be one of the most prolific wild plants that grow, and quite possibly a lot of other places in the United States. It's a thorn in the side for many landowners, no pun intended. It just grows everywhere. It takes over an area, whether it's the woods, your fields, your yard, wherever. And a lot of people fight to get rid of it. And I understand that sometimes it can just get too much. But it's a very good plant to have. To eat the berries. I love blackberry. It's probably my favorite berry fruit is blackberry. And so you have a food source, but there's also a medicinal source, and I want to talk about that here in a little bit. The problem is they just grow wild. And when they grow wild, they get real tall. You know, look at these. These things are actually taller than me right now. We've got them everywhere. They just grow crazy on the property. And the problem is when you have these older vines. You know, this one here's probably a 2-year vine, maybe only a year to 2 year vines. Fruit, the flowers and the fruit won't grow off of these older vines. The only vines that the fruit grows off of is current year vines. So all of this isn't going to do you anything. Also, as they just continue to grow and get out of hand, it makes it difficult to get in there. These things get big, huge, real woody, and well, it makes it where it gets harder to get in there and actually pick them. So what you need to do is prune them, and this is kind of taming them down. So in the fall and the winter, it's a good thing to prune them back. And what I do is I prune them back about 18 inches to 2 foot off the ground. And what that does is that allows for new growth to come, which will produce more fruit. So it's pretty simple. Just get in there and cut them back down to 18 inches, 24 inches or so, and it gets them cut down to where new growth will grow, and they're a little bit more tame. They're a little bit bushier. They don't grow quite so crazy. And what you can do over time is to take this wild plant and develop it, kind of tame it a little bit to where you can have more fruit growing. And it's not just a nuisance plant that a lot of people like to get rid of. I think it's funny that on one hand, a lot of people try to get rid of these things. And on the other hand, I see people every year trying to sell, or I'm assuming that they do, wild blackberry plants. I understand that there's domesticated ones that, seedless and all those different varieties. But I'm talking about just plain old wild blackberries. This past year I saw someone selling them for $10 a plant. And I thought, my goodness, I could be worth millions of dollars if I sold all the ones on our property. But this is a tip to keep them pruned back so that they produce more fruit and a little bit easier to get in there and kind of to harvest them when the berries are ripe. Like I said, you want to do this after they kind of die back, because all the nutrients, the food that the plant is holding over for winter is gone down in its roots. So you can go ahead and cut these back without hurting anything. Now, I also mentioned medicinal. A lot of people don't know this with them, and hold on. I pulled one up and I got to find it. Here it is. All right. The roots, I'm going to get in closer now. Let me adjust my camera so that you're not looking at my fat belly. All right. It'll adjust to the sun. Here's your root of the blackberry. They usually come up pretty easy because typically the roots are close to the surface, so you can just pull them up. Now you want to wear leather gloves because blackberries are very unforgiving. Lots of thorns all over them. But they're usually easy to pull up, and now's the time of the year. And here's a little herbal tip for you. If you're harvesting, whether it's in your garden or in the wild, if you're wanting to get the root, if you're using the root for whatever medicinal reasons, you typically want to do that, harvest that after the plant's died off. And it's just kind of logical. So the plant absorbs, you know, nutrients, light, water, all that stuff throughout the year. And then in the wintertime, when they die back, they send everything into their roots to store them over winter so that they have enough to get them going the next spring. So all the medicinal chemicals and stuff that's in the plant that you would want out of the root, they're going to be higher concentrations of them in the fall and early winter, because they've sent all that down into the roots to store it over for wintertime. So if you harvest, I mean, you know, you can still get medicinal value out of it in the summertime. If you needed a plant for some reason and all you have is growing and it's the middle of the summer, you're still going to get it. It's just not going to be high concentration. And of course the opposite's true for the top ends. If you're harvesting the flowers or the leaves or stuff, you want to get it when they're in their prime, when they're just really starting to grow. And my camera's having a hard time adjusting to this sun. Let me help it. It's like a strobe light going off in there. So you dig up the root. Like I said, they're real easy to do. Clean them off and usually cut them up and let them dry. It's not that hard for these things to dry. You typically don't have to worry too much about them rotting because it's a root. You can set them in the sun, maybe near your wood stove or on the lowest heat setting possible in your oven until they get really dry and woody. Now, what do you use it for? Blackberry root is excellent in teas. It has a very high concentration of tannic acid, and what that does is it causes mucous membranes to contract. So it's amazingly good for diarrhea. If you've got a really bad mucus nasal thing going on, it can help with that. It's best known for diarrhea. Anything where you have your body's producing too much mucus for whatever reason, this can help with that because it tightens up those membranes so that they don't produce that anymore. I had mentioned this in a video a while back about this being great for scours and calves, especially bottle-fed calves. If that's something that you've not done, because it's pretty cheap and easy to raise a bottle-fed calf up to the point of for butchery. You know, you buy a little bull calf or a little heifer calf, and you raise it up to butcher later on. You can get them pretty cheap. It's not that difficult to raise them once you get them past that bottle-fed part. They get scours, which is basically, and I know I'm being very basic here, but it's diarrhea. It's really bad diarrhea, and they can die from it in just a few days. And it's very common in bottle-fed. If they're nursing, it doesn't happen that often, but bottle-fed they do. And they get it, and there's all kinds of stuff you can get at the farm store through, farm vet or whatever. But you know what? In my personal experience, blackberry root has been way more effective than anything bought at a farm store. We've got a little steer right now that we're raising up to butcher next year, and we got him. He was actually given to us. Someone just said, we got too many of them. You can have the guy. And sure enough, about 3 days after we brought him home, he got scours. And I made up a tea of blackberry root and put it in his bottle and gave him 2 of those in one day, and it was gone. By the next day, he was fine. It works very fast. Now, this does not taste good. It's extremely bitter. So if you're making this for your children, which I'm actually going to make it for our daughter, our youngest, she's really snotty and croupy sounding cough, and so I'm going to make her a tea with this. It does not taste good. It's extremely, extremely bitter. You don't need that much. Couple little tiny, get in here close again. See how small these little pieces are? Just a couple of little pieces of those in tea, maybe not even 2, will be good enough for a serving, because it's really bitter. It's hard to you know, for children. You know, as an adult, I know that maybe something I take tastes awful, but it's good for me, so I'll drink it. But for a child, it doesn't always work that way. But it is very good for that. If they have diarrhea, anything like that, blackberry root's great. It lasts a long time. You can come out here now and dig, and you don't need a whole lot because, like I said, a little bit goes a long way. But and blackberry root grows like nuts. At least it does around here. So we've got more than enough to pull up for this. And you know, usually, because when you pull it up, you almost always there's a little piece that breaks off. The plant will grow from that little piece. So you're not killing it off if anyone happened to be worried about that. Trust me, I'm not, because there's way too much of it out here anyways. But it's great, you know, kind of clean it off, cut it up, and dry it out, and just put it in a jar, and it works great. Now listen here. I am not a doctor, and this is not an FDA approved message. This is just what I do. You need to research it for yourself, make sure that it'll work for you, that you feel confident. I am not giving out medical information. This is just some hillbilly herbal knowledge. So I'm not prescribing you anything. But anyways, I thought I'd let you guys know that. And then also the food source. If you manage your blackberries and you have tons of them, you know, because we have a lot, and you know, you can walk around and see patches that are full of berries, and other ones have just tiny little ones, they're not big. A lot of it's because they're not being managed right. You go in there and you really kind of manage them right, keep them trimmed back every year so that new growth happens, and it makes them healthier. You do that with a lot of fruit trees and stuff. You gotta manage them and prune them back. So you do that with wild blackberries, and you will increase your crop of wild blackberries, and they're amazing. It's a great free food source for your property. And you know, if you got enough, you can even sell them. Blackberries, typically wild blackberries, sell for a lot of money around here, which is crazy to me because there's so many growing everywhere. You can stop on the roadside in a ditch, and not that I harvest from ditches, but you could. Anyways, so you've got your good food source, free, growing out in your woods that you need to kind of manage, and then the root of the blackberry, great medicinal value for any kind of mucousy, diarrhea type of problem, and for your calves. Well, other ruminant animals can get scours too, not just calves. That's typically them, but we had a goat one time that got it, and this works for it. Make a good tea, put it in a bottle and give it to them, or however you want to, drench them with it, or however you want to do it, and it'll take care of that problem. And usually works really fast. So that's my tidbit of hillbilly herbal knowledge today. Thank you guys for watching, and gals. You know, when I say guys, no one said it yet, but it's not just singling out guys. Guys to me is both of you. Sorry. Guys and gals, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.